We are going to begin this hour, though, with the ongoing economic and financial fallout of President Trump's trade tariffs. This morning, U.S. stock futures are pointing to a positive open following days of heavy losses in global markets. Now, despite that, tensions between the U.S. and China continue to mount, while more business leaders are warning the trade war is bringing us closer to a recession. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans has the latest.
Hey there. After days of turmoil, the markets stabilized slightly on Monday, but it was still another tumultuous day of trading, with the Dow declining in the end for the third straight day. And now several top Wall Street leaders are warning of a potential recession and price hikes.
After another chaotic day on Wall Street, America's CEOs are sounding the alarm, warning that the U.S. economy could soon take a big hit after President Trump's sweeping tariff announcement sent markets spinning.
The economy is weakening as we speak. Most CEOs I talk to would say we are probably in a recession right now.
A new CNBC survey showing those concerns are widespread, with 69% of CEOs expecting a recession and 82% expecting resurgent inflation. The Dow swinging 2,600 points Monday, the most ever in a single day, closing down more than 300. J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon telling shareholders the situation is one large additional straw on the camel's back. Pershing Square CEO Bill Ackman, a Trump supporter, warning we're heading for a self-induced economic nuclear winter. And Virgin's Richard Branson tweeting yesterday, this is the moment to own up to a colossal mistake and change course. Otherwise, America will face ruin for years to come. But despite those fears, President Trump not backing down.
We're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country. And if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them.
Some consumers already rethinking the way they buy.
I take a lot of hand-me-downs, and we also go to the dollar store.
One retail group estimating sneakers made in places like Vietnam could soon cost Americans an additional $50 to $75 more per pair. And now Nintendo announcing a delay of its highly anticipated gaming system.
I'm not spending $600 on a Nintendo Switch 2.
The National Association of Wine Retailers also bracing for fallout, with wines from Europe set to be taxed at 20%.
One major player not looking to play games this morning, China, warning just hours ago it will fight to the end if Trump continues to make threats like an additional 50% tariff, which means there could be a 104% tax on Chinese imports if they all go into effect. Back to you.
All right, Christine, thank you. Well, President Trump continues, of course, to face political fallout here at home on these proposed tariffs to other nations. This comes as China vows to, quote, fight to the end after the president threatened to implement that additional tariff this weekend on Chinese goods. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us from Washington with this one. Peter, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. 6 more Senate Republicans have now signed up in support of a bipartisan effort to rein in the president's effort to unilaterally slap tariffs on foreign countries. But the White House has already made clear that they will veto that bill if it ever passes. And President Trump, he remains undeterred, Savannah, in his commitment to what most economists warn is a risky tariff game right now, arguing that any member of his party who backs down from the president's trade war is, quote, weak and stupid.
With President Trump's next round of escalatory tariffs set to go into effect at midnight, the president insists that despite rattled markets and recession fears, he's not considering hitting the pause button.
We're not looking at that.
After the president initially said every country has called to negotiate, President Trump's top advisors are now saying more than 50 countries have reached out. European officials offered to eliminate their tariffs on American-made cars and industrial goods if the U.S. will do the same in return. Despite the market suffering their worst days since the start of the pandemic, the president says he's unfazed by short-term financial pain.
I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end.
Administration officials have also been saying Americans will overlook temporary market turmoil.
Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations of what's happening.
But many may be invested. Research from the Federal Reserve shows more than half of American households own stock directly or through investment funds. Top Democrats say the president's tariffs are a self-inflicted wound.
Less than a week after Donald Trump started the largest, dumbest trade war in American history, all the signs say America is heading towards calamity.
For now, most Republicans are standing by President Trump.
And I think you got to give the president the latitude, the runway to do what it is he was elected to do.
Still, there are cracks emerging within the president's party.
If the outcome from these tariffs is really high tariffs from every country on earth against American goods, and really high tariffs from America against goods from every other country on earth, that is going to be really bad for Texas and really bad for America.
Of course, that was Texas Senator Ted Cruz there. Also this morning, the Washington Post is reporting that Elon Musk, one of President Trump's top lieutenants, who this weekend launched a barrage on social media with posts criticizing President Trump's aggressive tariff plan, also made personal appeals to rethink the tariffs, making those appeals directly to President Trump. The Post cites two people familiar with the matter on that. Of course, Musk's efforts, Savannah, so far have not been successful.
All right, Peter, thank you very much. Well, speaking of Musk, his Department of Government Efficiency is setting its sights on a new project upgrading the federal retirement systems. Now, for decades, retirement requests have been handled entirely on paper out of an old limestone mine, seriously, in Pennsylvania. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake got an exclusive look inside the old-fashioned operation.
Buried deep inside this mine in western Pennsylvania is a little-known government office that handles a critical mission for the federal workforce, now set to be overhauled by the Department of Government Efficiency.
From the mine entrance, which they call the portal, we took some golf carts a few hundred feet down into the mine. You can feel the air change when you get inside, and you can see this is all just roughly cut out of the limestone. This was once a limestone mine. And down here, this is where we find the OPM office, where a few hundred federal employees process all retirement paperwork for the entire federal government.
It's an analog operation, all done on paper. It can take months for the Office of Personnel Management to process a case, potentially delaying retiree benefits.
The facility has literally miles of files, some 26,000 filing cabinets filled with retirement paperwork, some of them stacked 10 high.
Matt McIsaac runs the day-to-day operations inside.
When you look out over all of this, what do you see?
I see people. I see careers. I see service.
And what do you mean a mine?
When Elon Musk brought up the mine in an Oval Office appearance back in February as a target ripe for reform, McIsaac agreed.
He's right. We have to improve the way that we do things for federal employees and for the American public.
Musk asked billionaire Airbnb co-founder Joe Gebbia to take on the project of modernizing not just the mine's operation, but the entire retirement system.
When you look at a project like this, where do you even start?
Well, how about here on file cabinet 56?
Gebbia says Doge engineers are working to create a fully digital experience, with federal retirees the hopeful, happy customers.
Why can't we have an Apple Store-like experience in the government, where you have great user experience, beautiful design, and up-to-date software?
Aiming to upgrade a process long seemingly set in stone. Garrett Hake, NBC News, Boyers, Pennsylvania.
Truly a fascinating look. You almost don't believe it till you see it. Well, this morning, millions of Americans are waking up to widespread flooding in communities across the South and Midwest. At least 24 people have died in the storm so far, and the water in some regions is still expected to rise through the end of the week. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra joins us from Clarksville, Tennessee, with more on this. Marissa, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. If you can believe it, this behind me, this is a neighborhood. And there's a reason why this yellow tape here is preventing us from getting any closer, because if you were to look over there, you might be able to see those are mailboxes. So that just shows you how high this water level still is. And even though we're not expecting any rain right here today, because of the way that river flooding works, the threat in the region far from over.
A flood disaster swelling overnight as rising water overwhelms southern and Midwestern communities.
The floodwaters is the worst that I've ever seen in my 20-plus years here.
It's a race against time for emergency crews, seen using every resource they have to evacuate this Louisville, Kentucky hotel, loading luggage on construction vehicles and hotel guests on rafts. The National Guard in high water vehicles specialized for the flood zones. Cities and towns remain underwater across Kentucky and Tennessee, swallowing these cars in this neighborhood. Homeowners here, after their second flood in 2 months, fed up and fearful.
You fear rain now. You see thunderstorms, the wind pick up. You just worry about this coming again. So you can't live. It's hard to live.
Now the region's relentless rain has ended, but not the threat it leaves behind.
Remember, this event is not over until the waters have receded, until the areas that have flooded are fully dry.
Mother of four, Shaquana Hart, returning to her home in Hopkinsville, Kentucky with NBC's Maggie Vespa. Her first time stepping inside since the waters first started rising outside on Friday. The reality washing over her.
You take a step at a time, and you get through it.
A frenzy shared across the flood zone.
At the time, you don't really think about the emotions. You're just in that mindset of, we got to get this done, hurry up and get out of here.
Now the damage in dollars and cents to cities, to the homes, cars like that you see over there, that will take time to assess. But this weather system has already cost at least 24 people their lives. We know that President Trump has approved emergency declarations for the states of Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, where we are. But Savannah, as you can see behind me, this threat is not only not over at the moment, but it's going to take a while for these communities to recover. And that's only after the water levels recede. Savannah?
Just so dramatic to see. Smart to point out that mailbox. Marissa Parra, stay safe. Thank you very much. Well, let's get a closer look at the effects of days of severe storms with your morning news now. Weather, we have Angie Lastman in studio with us. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. Just as Marissa said, it's going to take a little while for us to see some improvements. So no surprise that we once again are waking up to some of these flood alerts across this region. Specifically, 5 million people across parts of the Midwest are dealing with those flood warnings and flood advisories. And as we get into tomorrow, we'll likely start to see these rivers cresting. A lot of them already at moderate flood stages. Plenty of them at major flood stages where you see those brighter pink dots across much of this area. This will likely last through Saturday. The worst of it, again, the cresting is expected into Wednesday, but through the rest of your work week, we're going to continue to see all of that water with nowhere to go into those waterways, dealing with the flood stages elevated here across that region. Now, the good news is we've got this system that has worked out. It, yes, caused days and days of inundating rain, and that is on the way out, but we still have a little bit of rain left over from the tail end of it, and that's going to focus across the Sunshine State today, specifically anywhere from Port St. Lucie to points south of Miami. That's where you'll see periods of heavy rain stretching over to Fort Myers and across to Miami as well. So a potential for a bit of flash flooding across that region. Marginal risk right now, West Palm Beach down to Homestead, including Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Big picture look of your temperatures. It is chilly out there, and we've got plenty of alerts to prove it. 55 million people under these frost and freeze alerts. Some of these locations, same spots that are dealing with the flooding, and you're waking up in places like Nashville to 39 degrees. We've got 30s in St. Louis, 20s for Indianapolis, Des Moines, Rockford, 30 for Lexington, even Charleston getting out the door this morning into the mid-30s. By afternoon, a bit of improvement. We'll head to the 40s for Lexington and the 50s for Memphis. Nicer temperatures out west across parts of the Rockies where we're into the 70s and running above normal. Now, some warm and some cool here as we get into tomorrow, too. So the eastern half of the country, really east of the Midwest, you'll see temperatures below normal. So some 40s, some 50s for Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis. But the 70s and 80s on tap across the plains, specifically 86 degrees in Lubbock today. Tomorrow. So the milder conditions will settle in for folks there. It'll eventually rebound across the Great Lakes in the Midwest. We'll see temperatures back to those upper 60s on Thursday in St. Louis, and then mid-60s by the time we roll into the weekend there.
Oh, gosh, just warmer in New York, please.
I'll see what I can do.
Time. Yeah, you work on that, Angie. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Well, the Florida Gators are the new champions of college basketball. In a nail-biting end to this year's March Madness tournament, the Gators stormed back from 12 points down against the Houston Cougars to win their third NCAA title. NBC News correspondent Sam Brockel is there for the big game and the even bigger comeback. Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. Look, for weeks, this NCAA tournament was kind of just, steady as she goes, a lot of predictability. This Final Four was anything but. Everyone in this building was stunned last night. It certainly looked like Houston was on its way to the first title the program has ever won. But no, these Florida Gators were down by 9+ points in the second half, just like they were, Savannah, against Auburn and Texas Tech. No team in the last 20+ years has been in that scenario and won a title, but these Gators pulled it off.
From this resilient Florida squad, it couldn't have happened any other way. The Gators swallowing up their largest deficit of the entire tournament, enforcing a turnover in the waning moments, claiming their first title in almost 2 decades. and denying Houston history in a come-from-behind nail-biter.
We did what we did all year. We stayed the course. The Gators are natty, baby. We got the natty, baby. We got the natty. Let's go!
Star guard Walter Clayton Jr. scoring all 11 of his points in the second half. But his most clutch moment coming on the defensive end, swarming Houston's Emmanuel Sharp and preventing a possible game-winning shot with just seconds on the clock.
Man, it's a feeling I can't even explain, man. I can't wait to. I love you, Mom. I can't wait to see my mama, man. Mama, I love you, girl.
The Cougars didn't make it easy, keeping Florida in check for almost the entire game with rim-rocking dunks and back-breaking threes. But Florida senior Will Richard helped to keep the dream alive with a slew of three-pointers, to Elijah Martin making critical free throws to give Florida their lead.
The 2 free throws that you hit, biggest free throws of your life?
Definitely. Biggest free throws of my life. Biggest moment of my life, and I'm super proud.
Of course, for legendary Houston coach Kelvin Sampson, it was heartbreak for a team that's been consistently excellent since he arrived a decade ago.
I'm just going through those last 2 possessions more than anything else. It's incomprehensible in that situation. We couldn't get a shot.
I'm high on championship right now.
Overnight, the Gators celebrating where else? San Antonio's Riverwalk, their place in history now complete.
Now, that's a scene that I would have liked to have seen last night, Savannah. Unfortunately, we did have to actually go to bed. Todd Golden, the 39-year-old coach for the Florida Gators, becomes the youngest coach to win a national title since Jimmy Valvano back in 1983 with NC State. And I want to show you something with Walter Clayton Jr., the star for the Florida Gators. In the moments after they win the national championship, check out this video. He's hugging Emmanuel Sharp, who had just fumbled that ball and lost Houston their chances of potentially winning the game. That is sportsmanship. That's what basketball is all about, and just an incredibly powerful moment that we're so glad that we got to witness, Savannah.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. What an amazing image. Sam Brock, thank you so much. Well, we are lucky to be joined now by one of college basketball's newest national champions with the Gators, Thomas Houck. Thomas, good morning. Thank you very much for getting up early and talking to us after what I assume was a night of celebration. You're waking up a national champion today. Has it sunk in yet?
No, it hasn't, man. This has been incredible, and this journey this team is on so far has been awesome.
And it was awesome for all of us to see, just as Sam pointed out there, like such an exciting end to a tournament that had been somewhat predictable, which is typically unpredictable when it comes to this tournament. But take us inside the locker room at halftime. You're down at that point just by a bit, but then obviously in this second half, ultimately down by 12 points at one point. What was the conversation like that kind of brought you guys back?
Coach just got us back online and got us back focused. You know, we leaned a lot on him this year when we were down at deficits like that, this tournament especially. And we also leaned on our leaders to come in there and just give us motivation to go out there in the second half and perform like we did this whole tournament.
And then in that second half, right up at the end, just the defense from your team was incredible. Did you feel at the time during the game just how strong y'all were?
Yeah, definitely felt like we were putting together some stops. But, you know, once you're out there playing, sometimes I was just going with the game and going with the feel. And, you know, at the end there, I just couldn't wait for that buzzer to end when the ball was going around there, bouncing around.
I want to ask you also, because you had this run of comebacks in the tournament this year. You guys always found a way to turn things around late and then pull out a win. What's your secret there?
I don't know. I was telling a reporter earlier that we like to keep the fans interested. You know, we like to keep the game close. But yeah, I just think this team's super resilient and really, really gritty group of guys. And you know, it showed out there in the court today. We were able to cut down nets here.
Yeah, that's true. We got keep everybody on their toes, a nail biter every time. You mentioned a moment ago your coach and kind of the way he did speak to y'all at halftime. And Sam also just told us a second ago how neat it is. I mean, just 39 years old, youngest coach in a really long time to win. What's your relationship like with him? What's your team's relationship like with him?
I mean, Coach Golden's the guy. He comes into practice, and I tell everybody he's such a player's coach. And he'll come in there to shoot around with us, do drills, hop in like 3v3s and stuff like that. And he just relates to us a lot just because how young he is. And, you know, I think that kind of built our team chemistry up a lot this year. And, you know, it helped us be able to get this championship.
later this afternoon, I know you're going to be welcomed back to campus with a championship rally. What are you most looking forward to heading back to school as a national champion?
I'm just looking forward to seeing the fans. You know, the city of Gainesville deserved a champion here in the last couple of years, and, you know, basketball got one, and now it's football's turn, too, the next couple of years, too.
Thomas Houck, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us again. I know it's an early morning after what I'm sure was a long night. We appreciate it. We're so happy for you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.